Welcome to tonight's journey. In the quietest hours of the night, as the world around us drifts into sleep, we will travel back in time, thousands of years ago, to a land where endless golden wheat fields stretch all the way to the horizon, where a gentle river flows, carrying the breath of life within its waters. And there, a civilization once flourished and then vanished, leaving no explanation behind. Only red brick walls, seals carved with symbols no one has ever read, and a name that still echoes through the memory of history. Mohenjo Daro, the city that has slept beneath the dust of time for more than 4 millennia. Tonight, let this gentle voice guide you through its ancient streets, across silent squares, to rediscover the warmth of a city long forgotten. Now, if you are ready, close your eyes, let each breath flow softly, and let us begin. Under the gentle moonlight, the Indus River flows quietly across the vast plains, carrying with it the whispers of a civilization that has slept for thousands of years. There, among red bricks and straight streets, once stood a vibrant city where people lived, loved, and left their mark. Mohenjo Daro once awoke to the sounds of the morning market, the cool breath of the river, and golden sunlight spreading everywhere. Wide streets, an intricate water system, and bustling life made this place the thriving heart of the entire region. Then, one day, silence descended. No one knows why the city vanished. Perhaps it was a great flood, a drought, a plague, or something more mysterious. Only the silent walls and ancient carvings remain, as if guarding their secrets. Though time has swept away every sound, the bricks, pottery shards, and carved seals still remain, telling of skillful hands, merchants, artisans, and ordinary people who once walked this land. And when you leave Mohenjo Daro, you will carry with you something more than historical knowledge. It is the feeling that the past is still alive, still whispering through every breeze and every ripple of the Indus River. If only you listen. Morning in Mohenjo Daro did not begin with the sound of bells or drums, but with the rhythmic footsteps on baked brick pavements, blending with the gentle hum of voices as townsfolk made their way toward the central square. From narrow alleys, men, women, and children emerged, each carrying a fragment of the city's story. The square was more than just a place to trade goods. It was the heart of community life. Farmers displayed baskets full of barley, sesame, and green lentils. Potters arranged freshly fired jars, still carrying the faint scent of smoke. Goldsmiths presented jewelry of gold and precious stones, glittering in the soft morning light. Merchants from distant lands brought exotic wares, pungent spices, finely woven cloth, and rare-colored stones. The sounds of bargaining mingled with laughter and cheerful shouts. In that moment, Mohenjo Daro was like a flowing river of people, each person a ripple, merging together to create a vibrant living tapestry. In one corner of the square, children played ring toss and laughed aloud, while elders sat sipping tea, retelling old tales. No one knew that thousands of years later, all that would remain were silent bricks. But on that morning, Mohenjo Daro was still brimming with life, a heart beating strong at the center of the Indus Valley. If the square was the heart of Mohenjo Daro, then the city's water system was the lifeblood that nourished every street and rooftop. In the soft golden light of midday, the gentle murmur of water rose from the public wells. Deep, round wells lined with smooth red bricks, as if the hands of time still caressed them. A strong man hauled up a wooden bucket, each drop of cool water glistening under the sun, then poured it into a brick-lined channel. From there, the water quietly flowed along carefully planned grooves, winding past walls, turning around street corners, and finally reaching each household. Every home in Mohenjo Daro was cleverly designed, with its own well or one shared with neighbors, with tiled bathing areas where clean water flowed in and wastewater flowed out through underground drains covered with stone slabs. The air stayed fresh and pure, for everything was kept meticulously clean. a sophistication that many other civilizations would only achieve thousands of years later. In the courtyards, children laughed and splashed each other, their voices ringing like summer bird song. In one corner, a woman washed bundles of fresh green vegetables, letting the water slip through her fingers as though touching a gift from the Indus. An elderly man sat by the household storage tank, calmly inspecting each clay jar now filled and ready for the evening meal. In Mohenjo Daro, water was more than a means of survival. It was the invisible thread connecting everyone from one family to another, from house to house, from street to square. This flow nourished the city, kept it verdant, and made life here harmonious and serene, as if the whole city drank from the same sacred source. As one ventures deeper into the heart of Mohenjo Daro, a striking feature quickly becomes clear. The city was not built haphazardly, but planned like a drawing made with ruler and square. Streets ran parallel, intersecting at perfect right angles, forming neat rows of houses like bricks laid with deliberate precision. Each street was wide enough for 2 ox carts to pass without their wheels touching. Brick-paved sidewalks lined both sides, with drainage channels running along the edges, and at crossroads, there was often a public well or shared water tank for residents. This was living proof of the organization and foresight of those who had built this place. Most houses in the city were made of uniformly fired bricks, their thick walls keeping interiors cool in the summer and warm at night. Many homes had 2 floors, with wooden or brick staircases leading upward. Small windows were just large enough to let in a breeze while preserving privacy. In the courtyards, a green tree often stood, where families gathered or laid out seeds to dry under the sun. Curiously, each house seemed to follow a common standard. Kitchens, bathing areas, and storage rooms were all placed in sensible, consistent locations. It was as if an unseen hand had drawn the city's entire map, placing every brick and street exactly where it belonged. Residents could walk from their homes to the square, to the well, or to the market without ever losing their way. And with each step, they knew they lived in a city built not only for the present, but to endure through generations yet to come. Afternoons in Mohenjo Daro were when the marketplace reached its liveliest. As the sun began to lean westward, the shadows of rooftops stretched long over the brick-paved streets, and people from every alley poured into the main bazaar. The sound of footsteps mingled with cheerful calls, the giggles of children, and the steady rumble of ox cart wheels rolling over the dry ground. Stalls, temporarily set up with wooden frames and colorful fabric canopies, lined the marketplace. On low wooden tables, grains, pulses, and vegetables were neatly arranged into tidy mounds. The golden hue of barley, the green of lentils, the deep red-orange of ripe dates. In another corner, sacks of spices released a rich fragrance. The earthy aroma of turmeric, the sweet-sour scent of cumin, the warm note of cinnamon blending into the air and infusing the space with the warmth of the southern lands. The calls of bargaining rang out, sometimes followed by shared laughter when both buyer and seller reached a happy agreement. Some brought luxurious goods, gemstone necklaces, gold ornaments, or finely woven fabrics from faraway lands. Foreign traders, with different skin tones and distinctive clothing, mingled in the crowd, a testament to how Mohenjo Daro had once been a vibrant hub of international trade. On the edge of the market, small food stalls sent up curling streams of steam, where travelers and locals alike enjoyed freshly cooked dishes, the sizzling of oil on the pan, the clink of bowls tapping together, and the savory aroma of baked bread drifted far into the air. In this scene, Mohenjo Daro was more than just a city. It was a symphony of sounds, colors, and scents, a place where every sense was awakened and etched into memory. Leaving the market, if one follows the brick-paved streets that slope toward the lower parts of the city, the gentle murmur of flowing water soon reaches the ears. This is where the stone-lined wells and water channels provide life to all of Mohenjo Daro. Deep wells, their walls built from baked bricks, were scattered throughout residential areas. People came carrying clay jars, forming cheerful lines as they waited their turn, chatting with neighbors under the warm afternoon sun. The water drawn from these wells was cool and pure, lifted in buckets by rope, shimmering like liquid jewels in the golden light. Beyond the wells, the city's underground drainage system was a marvel that astonished any visitor. Along the streets, covered brick channels carried wastewater neatly away from homes, an achievement that many cities would not match for thousands of years. In another corner, the Great Bath, an expansive structure lined with bricks and sealed with natural bitumen, rested quietly, filled with clear water. This was not merely a place for bathing, but also a communal gathering spot, where purification rituals were held and friendships were strengthened. This water, flowing from wells to channels, from the Great Bath to the distant Indus River, was the lifeblood of the city. It brought cool relief in the heat of summer, purity to sacred ceremonies, and a timeless reminder that all life here sprang from a current that never ceased to flow. At the center of Mohenjo Daro, amid its orderly streets and bustling markets, lay a wide-open space, a gathering place for the people during important occasions. It was not a stone plaza like those of Western civilizations, but a large, level area paved with bricks, surrounded by public buildings. In the early mornings, the square echoed with the footsteps of people heading to market, the lively chatter of merchants negotiating prices, and the laughter of children trailing behind their parents. On festival days, this place transformed into a sea of people, alive with the vibrant colors of traditional garments, resonating with the beat of drums and the melodies of ceremonial music. Beside the square stood larger buildings than the ordinary homes, perhaps granaries or meeting halls for the city's leaders, towering as symbols of order and authority. It was believed that the city's most important decisions were made here, under the watchful eyes of the community. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about this place was its atmosphere, an invisible sense of connection. No matter which street they came from or what trade they practiced, everyone met here sharing stories, exchanging goods, and keeping the pulse of the city alive. If Mohenjo Daro were a living body, then this square would be its heart, the place where every path, every person, and every story converged. Not far from the central square, hidden behind narrow streets, lies what is believed to have once been the learning and knowledge-sharing centers of Mohenjo Daro. Though no direct evidence of schools like those of modern times has been found, the remnants left behind, clay tablets etched with symbols, intricately carved seal impressions, and pottery fragments with inscriptions, lead archaeologists to believe that the inhabitants here possessed a developed system of writing and record-keeping. One can imagine, under the cool shade of brick walls, children and young adults gathered around a teacher, listening intently as they learned to read symbols, measure weights, and understand the principles of trade. Beyond mere literacy, they would have studied astronomy, irrigation techniques, and medicine knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next. The seals engraved with elephants, bulls, or geometric patterns were not just decorative. They were keys to unlocking the secrets of a language long lost. And although that language remains undeciphered to this day, it stands as undeniable proof that Mohenjo Daro was once a place where the light of knowledge illuminated every corner. Here, knowledge was not only preserved but used to sustain the prosperity of the community, like a flame that never went out, burning brightly in the heart of a city by the Indus River. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, a golden-orange light spread across the flat rooftops of Mohenjo Daro. The city seemed to don a new garment, softer, more tranquil than the lively bustle of the day. On rooftops paved with baked bricks, residents made use of the open space to dry grain, air out fabrics, or simply sit and relax, sharing conversations with family after a long day's work. From here, one could see the narrow streets weaving like a network, drawing the eye toward the distant shimmer of the Indus River under the fading light of dusk. Children's laughter echoed between the brick structures, mingling with the slow, steady footsteps of the elderly. A cool, moist breeze drifted in from the river, gently swaying the fabrics hung out to dry. In that moment, it felt as if the whole city shared a single breath, slow, peaceful, and deeply connected. And when the last rays dissolved into night, oil lamps began to flicker to life, their warm glow spilling through doorways, illuminating stories and dreams within one of humanity's most radiant civilizations. Mohenjo Daro was not only a city of brick houses and orderly streets, it was also a vital trading hub, connecting the Indus Valley with faraway lands. From its bustling river docks, wooden boats laden with goods grain, cotton, gemstones, and pottery would set sail, drifting down the Indus to other settlements or even crossing the sea to Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf. In return, the city received precious items from distant places: copper, tin, semi-precious stones, and finely crafted objects from other civilizations. In the central marketplace, the scent of spices mingled with the lively calls of vendors. Skilled artisans displayed stone bangles, bead necklaces, and small terracotta figurines, objects that held both practical and symbolic value. Trade was not only about goods, but also about knowledge and culture. Merchants from distant lands brought with them stories, news, and unfamiliar customs, allowing Mohenjo Daro to preserve its own identity while opening itself to the wider world. Like the ever-flowing Indus River, commerce was the lifeblood of the city, bringing prosperity to every street, every home, and every person. At the heart of Mohenjo Daro stood a striking architectural complex, believed to be the city's center of religion and ceremonial life. The most famous of these was the Great Bath, a large rectangular pool lined with baked bricks, waterproofed with bitumen, and flanked by stairways descending at both ends. It is thought that this place was not simply for bathing, but for performing spiritual purification rituals before festivals or prayers. Surrounding it were small chambers, perhaps used by priests or attendants who served in the ceremonies. The streets leading to this area were often wider and cleaner, as if everything converged toward a shared heart. A place that connected people to faith, the divine, and the spiritual order of the community. Stepping into this space, one can imagine the gentle sound of water lapping against the sides, the soft scent of incense drifting through the air, and the glow of oil lamps reflecting on the still surface. It was an atmosphere both solemn and serene, making one believe they were standing before a gateway to the sacred realm. Among the ruins of Mohenjo Daro, archaeologists have uncovered countless traces of art and mysterious symbols. There are seals carved from steatite depicting images of bulls, elephants, tigers, and even fantastical creatures that seem half real, half imagined. Each seal is intricately engraved, adorned with characters from the Indus Valley script, a writing system that to this day remains undeciphered. In addition, small terracotta figurines have been found throughout the city, depictions of mother goddesses symbolizing fertility, tiny warriors, and musicians holding instruments. These creations were not merely decorative. They appear to carry the beliefs, hopes, and stories of the people who made them. On the walls of some structures, traces of pigment have been discovered, evidence that, long ago, this city was far more vibrant than we imagine, with walls painted in shades of red, yellow, and blue. These fragments of art are like echoes from a vanished culture, showing that the people of Mohenjo Daro lived not only to survive, but to create, to leave behind a part of their soul for time to carry forward. Even after centuries of study, Mohenjo Daro still holds secrets that no one has been able to fully explain. First, there is the Indus Valley script. Thousands of seals and inscribed tablets have been discovered, yet no one can read them. They are like letters sent mistakenly into the future, with the recipient unable to open them. Then comes the question of why the city was abandoned. There is no evidence of a great war, nor any definitive proof of a sudden plague or natural disaster. Some theories suggest that a change in the course of the Indus River or shifts in climate forced its inhabitants to leave, but all remain speculation. There are also strange findings. Some skeletons discovered in positions suggesting sudden death, with no time to react, scorch marks on brick walls, fueling theories of an explosion or some unknown catastrophe. These mysteries make Mohenjo Daro a story without an ending, a book left open, its final pages blank, inviting us to keep searching for answers. As the sun begins to sink beyond the horizon, golden light stretches across the brick walls of Mohenjo Daro. The ancient streets seem to glow one last time, reflecting a warm light as if trying to hold on to the moment before darkness falls. The wind drifts softly through the narrow alleys, carrying the scent of earth and the damp breath of the Indus River. You stand there, among the ruins, imagining a sunset thousands of years ago. Families gathered under their rooftops, children playing in the streets, merchants closing their stalls, all blending together into a vivid painting of the past. But then, shadows slowly take over. Those images fade, leaving only the sound of your footsteps and the slow rhythm of your heartbeat in the stillness. Mohenjo Daro falls back into its long slumber, just as it has for millennia. Time, like the Indus River beside the city, flows endlessly. It carries with it the monsoons and the dry seasons, the generations born and gone, and the memories of a civilization that once flourished. Mohenjo Daro no longer hears the lively bustle of marketplaces, the glow of lamps at night, or the laughter of children. In their place remain the whisper of the wind and the silent shadows of brick walls. Yet, hidden deep within each brick is the story of thousands of lives, a story that time has not entirely erased. Perhaps, each time we speak the name Mohenjo Daro, the city awakens once more, if only within our imagination. And somewhere, beneath the dust of time, the Indus Valley civilization is still whispering, telling its story to those willing to listen. On the morning of a special day, as the sun had just risen above the horizon and its golden light was slowly spreading across the red brick rooftops of Mohenjo Daro, there came the sound of drums. At first it was only a few slow beats, echoing from somewhere in the central square. But then, like a wave of sound, the drumming spread, blending with the sound of footsteps and lively chatter. The whole city seemed to awaken once more, not only by the sun, but by the rhythm itself. The narrow alleys leading toward the square began to fill. People, from the elderly to the young, dressed in their most vibrant garments, were moving in the same direction. Women draped embroidered shawls over their shoulders, the cloth catching the morning light. The drums grew more insistent, their rhythm quickening. In the square, the drummers stood in a wide circle, each holding a large drum with buffalo hides stretched over a wooden frame. They struck with sturdy wooden mallets. The tempo rose and fell like the waves of the Indus. A few men played bamboo flutes, the long notes weaving into the drums to create a music both stirring and warm. Today, the central square was more splendid than ever. Multicolored fabric flags hung high, swaying in the wind. Temporary stalls ringed the square, piled with festival gifts from honey cakes and gemstone necklaces to small sachets of fragrant spices. In the middle of the square, a wide space had been cleared. People said that when the drums shifted to a special rhythm, the dancers would step out and begin the harvest dance, a rite performed here for hundreds of years. From the rooftops around, a few onlookers watched, eyes bright, hands shading the sun. The scent of freshly baked bread drifted in the air, mingling with the jasmine flowers pinned in the hair of the young women. All of Mohenjo Daro seemed to share one breath, the breath of joy, of reunion. And then, the drums slowed to a deep, steady beat, like the thump of a heart. The faint jingle of bracelets began to sound. The ceremony had officially begun. As the drumbeat grew brighter and quicker, the atmosphere in the square burst open. From the four corners, groups of dancers stepped forward, each wearing their most radiant attire. The women's skirts flared wide, sewn from layered gauzy fabric in red, yellow, and emerald, With every step they sent soft waves through the air. On their heads were fresh garlands woven from white jasmine and yellow chrysanthemums, releasing a gentle fragrance with every turn. Their wrists were stacked with silver bangles. Each movement sent a bright chiming that blended with the urgent drums. The men wore long cloth wrapped at the waist, their sun-browned chests bare, palm leaf fans dyed in rich colors in their hands. Every sweep of the fan created a little breeze, which lifted the ribbons tied at their wrists. The dance began with slow circles, bare feet touching the warm brick. The dancers turned around one another, eyes steady, lips smiling, as if exchanging blessings for an abundant harvest. Suddenly the drums quickened like heavy rain on brick roofs. Their steps quickened too, arms opened wide, skirts and ribbons flared like little flames. A high flute line soared above, drawing the troupe into the climax. Children in the crowd cheered. Some tried to imitate the steps, making the adults laugh. Elders sat on the steps, gently swaying to the beat, pride shining in their eyes, for they knew this dance had been passed down since their grandparents' time. Every gesture, every turn told a story of sweat falling on the fields, of plump golden grain under the sun, of feasts that stretched long into the night when the harvest was done. Without words, the dance spoke a language of joy, of gratitude to earth, to water, and to the rains that sustained the city. As the dance slowed, the drums softened. The dancers bowed together, hands placed before their chests. A thank you to the gods and to the ancestors. The crowd applauded. Cheers rolled across the square, carried on a breeze that smelled faintly of the river. Leaving the lively square, a brick-paved road led down toward the Indus. Houses gave way to lines of palms and eucalyptus, their interlaced shadows swaying in the evening wind. From a distance, the temple emerged, majestic and serene. Broad stone steps ran straight to the river's edge, where the water glittered with the setting sun. The temple's red brick walls, darkened by years, still held their quiet strength. On the roof, small multicolored flags fluttered, each embroidered with ancient signs whose full meanings only the priests understood. Bronze wind chimes hung from the pillars and rang softly, joining the hush of waves lapping the steps. Inside, warm incense filled the air. On the altar stood a greenstone statue of the river deity, its gentle gaze turned toward the stream. Before it were ceramic bowls heaped with grain, fresh flowers, and cups of clear water. Priests in white robes trimmed with red stepped out slowly, holding bronze vessels. They scooped water from the river, lifted it so that the sunset shone through the pure stream, and gently poured it over the flowers on the altar. A deep, steady chant rose like the heartbeat of the city. One by one, people knelt, touching their foreheads to the cool stone, whispering prayers for fair rains and gentle winds, for peace at home, and for the departed to rest. Outside, the sun neared the horizon. Golden light poured through the doorway, bathing the statue and the devoted faces. Under the dusk, the Indus became a vast golden ribbon, drifting onward, carrying the city's wishes toward the sea. When the rite ended, a light breeze stirred. The flags quivered. The chimes sang as if the gods were answering. The people left the temple and climbed the brick steps, each carrying a calm within, as though the river and the temple had handed them a piece of Mohenjo Daro's soul. Night had fallen, but the harbor still glowed with torchlight. Great wooden boats hugged the bank. The smell of salt mingled with the scent of spices from stacked sacks along the quay. Around a small fire, a circle of merchants sat. They had come from distant lands, Oman's shores, the Mesopotamian plain, even kingdoms far beyond the desert. Their clothes bore their homelands, long robes embroidered with wave patterns, sand-colored headcloths, bright feathered caps. A middle-aged man with a long graying beard cradled a four-string wooden instrument. His fingers brushed the strings. A warm, faraway sound rose. He began to sing, a strange melody, slow and lingering, like waves breaking against a stone shore. His song told of sea crossings, of starlit nights over open water, and of the feeling of setting foot in a city both unfamiliar and welcoming. His voice, tasting faintly of salt, entwined with the instrument until the whole harbor seemed to hold its breath. Mohenjo Daro's sailors listened quietly. They did not understand every word, but they understood the feeling within homesickness, the joy of finding friends in a foreign place, and the longing to reach new horizons. Across the quay, a few women bundled spices, cinnamon, star anise, turmeric for the next morning's trade. They hummed along as they worked, sometimes adding lines of their own, making a curious harmony of tongues. Firelight flickered across every face. In that moment, there was no distance between those who arrive and those who remain. In the merchant's song, Mohenjo Daro was not just a city, it was a meeting of stories, of dreams crossing the borders of land and sea. From the harbor, a stone road curved into a narrow lane where warm yellow light stretched out ahead. This was the night market, the pulsing heart of Mohenjo Daro after dark. Hundreds of ceramic oil lamps stood on wooden racks, their flicker danced on red brick walls. The faint scent of sesame oil burning blended with spices, dyed cloth, and freshly baked bread, an unmistakable fragrance of the night. Laughter and chatter bubbled everywhere. Locals and travelers alike spread wide cloths and laid out their goods, agate necklaces, pottery painted with wave motifs, even hand-carved knives said to be from far-off Damascus. One stall drew special attention, a woman with hair tied high selling silk dyed with natural pigments. Lamplight washed over each thread, making the fabric gleam like river water under the moon. Customers ran their fingers across it, feeling the cool smoothness, and nodded with quiet smiles. Not far away, children darted about clutching flat, warm honey cakes. The sweet aroma drifted down the lane. Vendors' calls overlapped bakers, spice sellers rising and falling like a familiar song of the night. Beside a heap of spice sacks, a man played a bamboo flute. The gentle melody, light as a night breeze, carried hints of cinnamon and turmeric, and the day's weariness seemed to fade. Overhead, strings of shells and tiny bells were strung across the lane. Each soft gust set them tinkling clear little voices, as if the river god and wind god were speaking together. In the shimmer of the lamps, the night market was more than an exchange of goods. It was where people met, shared stories, and kept Mohenjo Daro's heartbeat sounding through the long, beautiful night. Leaving the bustling market behind, the brick-paved road led the traveler into a quiet alley. The lamps thinned, leaving warm islands of light on an old, high wall. Here, time felt still. On the red bricks, people long ago had carved and painted hundreds of signs, the ancient symbols of the Indus civilization. No one now could be sure of their meanings, but standing before the wall felt like touching a language from another world. There were small squares with curving lines inside like waves, triangles stacked atop one another, a mighty bull with powerfully curved horns, star-like marks joined by fine lines, like a map of a sky now lost. The city's old storyteller once said, "Each sign is a message from our ancestors. We no longer understand them, but they still watch over us through every night." Under the moon, the symbols gleamed with a faint silver, as if they were whispering among themselves. A cool, river-scented wind made the traveler pull the shawl closer. A child passed by, carrying a small oil lamp. He paused, raised the light to the wall, studied the signs carefully, then smiled, a simple smile that held a faith that, at the first light of dawn, a narrow road of reddish clay tiles stretched from the heart of the market toward the river. The tiles were warm underfoot, still holding the heat from yesterday's sun. Along both sides of the road, rows of pottery stalls had sprung up like a ribbon of color leading to the water. There were jars tall enough to store a season's worth of grain, their surfaces etched with spirals and wave patterns. Smaller bowls, glazed in deep blues and earthy reds, reflected the soft morning light. Some cups bore tiny carvings fish, lotus flowers, the curved horns of a bull symbols the potter said would bring luck to their owners. The air was rich with the scent of baked clay, mingled with the faint coolness drifting from the river. Potters, their hands still dusted with pale earth, chatted with early visitors, holding up their work proudly. Children wandered from stall to stall, peeking inside empty jars as though hoping to find treasures. Now and then, a playful shout rang out as someone pretended to hide inside the largest pots. The further one walked, the closer the sound of water became, steady, unhurried, like a great breathing. Each step along the pottery road felt like a journey not just toward the river, but toward something older than the city itself, something the people of Mohenjo Daro had always known was there, waiting. At the river's edge, the city gathered once more. The Indus stretched wide before them, its surface rippling with the light of the rising sun. Mist clung low over the water, glowing gold where the sun touched it. The priests stood in a line on the stone steps, each holding a vessel carved from dark green stone. The high priest raised his hands. The drums began again, slow, steady, like the pulse of the earth. One by one, the priests lifted their vessels toward the sky. The sunlight caught the water within, turning it into liquid fire. Then, with deliberate care, they poured it into the river. The water splashed softly, merging with the current, carrying the city's blessings downstream. Behind them, the people bowed their heads. Some closed their eyes. Others whispered prayers into the wind. A child reached out to touch the river's surface, then quickly pulled back, smiling as the cold clung to their fingertips. The high priest spoke a final blessing, that the river's flow would remain strong, that its waters would nourish their fields, that its spirit would guard the city through the turning of the seasons. As the last of the water was offered, the drums faded. Only the river's own voice remained, endless, patient, and sure. The crowd slowly dispersed, but many lingered at the bank, watching the golden light dance on the waves. In that moment, it seemed as if the Indus itself had listened, and in its silent way, had promised to remember. The sun of a new day slowly rose, its gentle light spreading like a golden scarf across the flat rooftops of Mohenjo Daro. The lively drumbeats of yesterday's festival were gone, yet a faint echo lingered in the air, as if every brick, every step still remembered the rhythm. The streets, still damp with night dew, reflected the soft pink glow of the morning. From afar, kitchen smoke began to rise, drifting in thin trails into the sky. Laughter and chatter floated down from the rooftops, where families shared a simple breakfast, warm, fragrant flatbread served with honey or dried nuts. In the central square, the temporary stalls from the festival had not yet been fully taken down. A few vendors tidied up, gathering what remained, a handful of copper bracelets, pouches of aromatic spices, hand-woven cloths dyed in deep indigo. Occasionally, a group of children would dart past, scooping up scraps of colorful ribbons left from the festival flags. On the steps leading down to the city's great well, women had already gathered, their clay water jars lined neatly beside them. As they scooped water, they spoke in low voices, recalling the dancers' graceful steps, the drummer who missed a beat, or the most delicious dishes they had tasted. The sound of water filling the jars mingled with their conversations, forming a gentle music of daily life, peaceful and familiar. To the east, where the Indus River curved like a silver ribbon, a few fishing boats had set off before dawn. On deck, the men laughed and spoke as they worked swiftly to cast their nets, hoping for a good catch to bring to the morning market. And above it all, from the rooftops, elders sat cross-legged, eyes half closed, soaking in the first light of day. They heard every familiar sound, the crowing of roosters, the hurried footsteps of someone running late, the wind stirring the last remaining festival flags. Mohenjo Daro was returning to its usual rhythm, yet today that rhythm felt slower, gentler, like a deep breath after a night of joy and celebration. Morning in Mohenjo Daro did not begin only at the square or by the riverbank, but also in the narrow streets of the artisans, where the sound of hammers, the whir of spinning pottery wheels, and the scent of freshly cut wood blended together like a slow, steady symphony of labor. The potters sat around their wheels, their hands damp, gently shaping each turn of clay, transforming lifeless earth into fine jars and bowls. Morning light streamed through small windows, painting golden streaks across their calloused hands. Each rotation was a heartbeat of time, a breath of a craft that had existed for hundreds of years. Nearby, carvers bent low over blocks of wood or slabs of stone. Small chisels touched the surface, carving delicate patterns, images of deities, birds, or mysterious symbols only those in the trade could understand. The scent of wood mingled with the fresh mineral tang of newly cut stone, creating an earthy, humble fragrance. Farther along, the street of the weavers appeared like a vivid painting. Looms creaked rhythmically as fine silk threads came together into vibrant cloth, red as the silk cotton flowers, blue as the Indus River, gold as the midday sun. Children stood at the doorways, wide-eyed, watching the skillful hands of their mothers and sisters. Here, time seemed to slow down. Each artisan was like a beat in the city's heart, quiet yet unyielding. There was no noise of festivals, only the steady sound of work, but it was this very labor that nourished the soul of Mohenjo Daro. Leaving the artisans' quarter, the road led to a monumental structure known to everyone in the city, the central granary. This was not merely a place to store seeds and grain, but a symbol of Mohenjo Daro's prosperity and unity. The granary stood upon a raised platform, with broad steps leading to its wide entrance. Its thick walls, built from neatly laid, deep red baked bricks, seemed to bear the careful consideration of every craftsman's hand. Inside, the air was cool, preserving the golden sacks of wheat and barley, still carrying the fragrance of the sun. In the mornings, ox carts laden with sacks from surrounding farmlands arrived in a steady procession. The grinding of wooden wheels against the earth, the labored snorts of oxen, and the calls of workers to one another formed a bustling rhythm, a song of abundance announcing a bountiful harvest. In one corner sat the record keeper, sharp-eyed, noting every sack that was unloaded. With a measuring stick, he gauged each load and recorded the figures onto a wooden tablet. Across the way, a group of young men worked quickly, stacking the sacks neatly to keep the walkways clear and safe. Inside, the scent of fresh grain mingled with that of dry straw, a rustic, earthy aroma that felt warm and comforting. Occasionally, a few kernels would spill onto the floor, attracting sparrows that fluttered down through the open windows to snatch them up. The granary was more than a storehouse. It was a lifeline binding the people together. Each harvest, the grain brought in by farmers would come here, and from here, it would be sent out again, to every household, to every table, sustaining the strength of an entire civilization. Leaving the central granary behind, the red brick road leads to a structure that every visitor to Mohenjo Daro stops to admire, the Great Bath. It sits in the middle of a wide courtyard, surrounded by corridors and changing rooms. The high, straight walls of baked brick give the interior both privacy and a sense of solemnity. The bath is rectangular, nearly the size of a modern swimming pool, its floor paved with smooth, flat bricks, sealed tightly with bitumen to prevent any leakage. At each end, broad steps descend into the clear water, while in one corner, a system of terracotta pipes brings water from a nearby well. Another pipe carries the used water out toward a garden beyond. In the gentle light of morning, townsfolk arrive one by one. Some step quietly into the water, scooping it over their heads as if washing away the dust of the previous day. Groups of young men sit by the edge, chatting cheerfully while soaking their feet in the cool shallows. White lotus flowers float on the surface, drifting lazily with the ripples. The elders say that from above, the great bath looks like the green heart of the city, where every drop, every ripple carries the stories of thousands who once lived, loved, and dreamed beneath the skies of Mohenjo Daro. From the great bath, a long street paved with deep red baked bricks stretched straight toward the Indus River. Walking along this road in the early morning, one could hear more than just the sound of footsteps. It was the sound of a city breathing. On both sides, small stalls began to open their doors. A fish seller sat beside baskets of fresh catch, their scales still shimmering with droplets of water, the faint, briny scent mingling with the fragrance of herbs from the stall next door. An elderly woman selling spices smiled warmly, scooping spoonfuls of golden turmeric powder for her customers, the yellow dust clinging to her hands like sunlight. The closer one got to the river, the clearer the sound of water lapping against the bank became. Interwoven with it were the playful shouts of children and the gentle clinking of boats knocking together. Small wooden boats with high prows, tied tightly to wooden posts, swayed softly with the current. A broad-shouldered man hefted a sack of grain onto a boat. Nearby, a group of women washed clothes, their hands slapping the water with rhythmic force, sending up sprays of white foam. The morning sunlight danced across the ripples, gilding each crest as though the river itself had been inlaid with gold. The riverbank was not only a place of trade, it was where stories were shared, where folk songs rose into the air, and where people found one another again after a long day. The Indus, with its endless current, brought life, carried away sorrows, and quietly bore the very soul of Mohenjo Daro toward the distant horizon. By midday, the sun hung high over Mohenjo Daro, its golden light shimmering on the surface of the Indus. On this day, the riverbank transformed into a sacred place, not just for trade or daily chores, but for a ritual that had bound the city to its lifeblood for generations, the water offering ceremony. Men, women, and children gathered in rows along the bank, each holding small clay pots filled with clear water drawn at dawn. The pots were often decorated with simple carvings, waves, fish, or the crescent moon, symbols believed to please the river god. A soft hum of chants began to ripple through the crowd, led by the elders. Their voices, low and steady, blended with the rustle of the wind and the quiet lap of water against the shore. From afar, it sounded like the river itself was speaking. At the signal, the people stepped forward in unison. Slowly, they tilted their clay pots, letting the water pour into the river. Droplets caught the sunlight, scattering like tiny shards of crystal before sinking into the flowing current. Some closed their eyes, whispering prayers for a good harvest, for safe travels, for their children's health. Others simply watched, their faces calm, as though entrusting a part of their own heart to the river. The elders explained that the ceremony was not just an offering to the god of the river, but a reminder that water was both a gift and a trust. Without it, the fields would wither, the streets would empty, and the city's heartbeat would fade. When the last pot was emptied, the crowd lingered. The river continued its eternal journey, carrying with it the blessings, hopes, and unspoken dreams of Mohenjo Daro. As evening descended, Mohenjo Daro seemed to shift into another world. The colors of the day, the bright fabrics, the sunlit streets, gave way to a softer amber glow. From every home, courtyard, and marketplace, clay oil lamps were lit, their small flames swaying gently in the night breeze. The streets filled once more, but this time the pace was slower. Families strolled together, vendors reopened their stalls under the flicker of torchlight, and musicians found their places on low stone steps, plucking the strings of their lyres or tapping small drums in rhythms meant for the night. Along the main road, storytellers began their work. Children gathered in tight circles, their eyes wide as tales of ancient heroes, clever animals, and gods in disguise filled the warm air. The stories rose and fell like the river's own current, sometimes drawing laughter, sometimes hushes of awe. In one corner of the marketplace, artisans displayed their finest creations by lamplight. Intricate jewelry caught the fire's glimmer, pottery shone with painted patterns, and woven cloth glowed like captured sunlight. Deals were struck quietly, with nods and handshakes, the city's trade continuing even under the stars. From the rooftops, the view was magical. The entire city shimmered with thousands of tiny flames, each one a heartbeat of the people who called this place home. The scent of roasting grains and spiced lentils drifted upward, mingling with the distant sound of river water flowing in the dark. For those walking through the streets, the night fires were more than just light. They were a promise that even when the sun left the sky, life in Mohenjo Daro would continue to glow, warm and unbroken. Beyond the bustling streets and glowing lamps, the river flowed, silent yet full of unseen life. At night, the Indus became a ribbon of silver under the moonlight, its surface shifting with slow, deliberate currents. The city's noise faded the closer one walked to the banks, replaced by the steady, eternal murmur of water. Here, fishermen prepared for the night's work. Their small wooden boats, patched and worn by years of use, were tied loosely to posts driven into the mud. Lanterns hung at the bow, casting trembling halos over the rippling surface. Nets were checked and folded with practiced hands, each knot telling the story of countless catches before. On the stone steps leading down to the river, a few elders sat quietly, speaking in low voices. They talked not only of fish or harvests, but of omens and dreams, of the river's moods, and of how its depths remembered things no human could recall. A little farther downstream, women in bright shawls knelt at the water's edge, filling clay jars for the next day. The sound of water pouring into the vessels was soft, almost secretive, as though the river whispered something only they could hear. Above them, the moon drifted between thin clouds, its reflection breaking and reforming with every ripple. Somewhere in the darkness, a bird called, and its echo carried far down the water's path. For the people of Mohenjo Daro, the river at night was more than a source of life. It was a guardian, a listener, and a silent witness to their joys, fears, and unspoken prayers. And though the city might sleep, the Indus never truly did. It kept watch, flowing on into the deep, endless dark. When the first light of dawn touched Mohenjo Daro, it was the citadel that caught it first. Rising above the rest of the city, its brick walls glowed with a soft golden hue, as if the sun had chosen it as its messenger. From below, it seemed to stand like a great guardian, part fortress, part sacred heart of the city. The air up here was cooler, carrying the faint scent of clay, river water, and distant fires. Wide steps led upward to the main platform, where priests and officials moved quietly, their white garments fluttering in the breeze. Clay tablets, sealed with intricate symbols, were stacked neatly on wooden shelves. Scribes bent over them with sharpened reeds, their hands steady as they inscribed records of trade, festivals, and prayers. From the edges of the platform, one could see the entire city awaken. Smoke curled from hearths, markets began to stir, and the streets, narrow and winding like streams, filled slowly with movement. In the far distance, the river glimmered like a silver serpent in the morning light. At the very center of the citadel stood the great bath, a deep, rectangular pool lined with perfectly fitted bricks. Even at this early hour, its water was still and mirror-like, reflecting the pale sky above. The priests said the bath was a place of purification, not for the body alone, but for the spirit. And as the sun climbed higher, the water caught its light, shimmering as if alive. Here, decisions that shaped the city were made. Here, ceremonies bound the people together. And here, beneath the gaze of the rising sun, Mohenjo Daro renewed its vows each morning to endure, to prosper, and to live in harmony with the river that gave it life. The dark red brick steps, worn smooth over the years, glisten under the late afternoon light as they descend to the gentle edge of the Indus River. The water shimmers, reflecting the sky turning golden, stretching the last rays of the day across its surface. A woman, balancing 2 clay jars on her shoulders, walks slowly, her movements graceful like a familiar dance. At the final step, she sets the jars down, scooping the cool water with practiced ease, her hands quick yet tender. Children gather at the water's edge, splashing each other, their laughter ringing like little bells. A few young men stand on boats anchored nearby, mending their nets while watching the children play, smiling quietly. The river breeze carries the scent of damp earth, the grass along the banks, and a faint trace of rice fields from afar. It feels like a cool embrace wrapping around all of Mohenjo Daro, soothing away the weariness of the day. As soon as the sun touches the water's edge, the riverside market comes alive. Stalls stretch along the quay displaying fresh fish, green vegetables, wildflowers, and brightly dyed fabrics. The sounds of bargaining mingle with bursts of laughter and the lively calls of women inviting customers. A boat from distant lands has just arrived, carrying fragrant cinnamon, fiery pepper, and golden turmeric scents blending together into a warm, intoxicating aroma. Buyers and sellers weave among the flickering oil lamps swaying in the breeze, the golden flames casting a glow over each face. A young couple chooses a length of red cloth for their wedding attire, while an elderly man leans on his cane, picking fresh greens for supper. Here, the market is not just a place of trade, it is where people meet, share stories, and keep the heartbeat of the city alive. When the last stalls close and the oil lamps are lit along the streets, Mohenjo Daro falls into a gentle hush. The moon rises over the river, silvering the rooftops and casting soft light on the narrow lanes. In the stillness, one can hear the faint sound of waves lapping against the quay, the distant hoot of an owl, and the slow, steady breathing of a city at rest. Somewhere behind closed doors, families gather for their last meal, their quiet conversations blending with the crackle of small hearth fires. It is a peace that feels timeless, one that has watched over the city for centuries. Before sleep claims the city, the wind carries a faint whisper along the streets and rooftops. It speaks of the river's endless journey, of fields yet to be sown, of festivals yet to come. The people of Mohenjo Daro sleep without knowing that one day the streets, the markets, and the laughter will fade into dust. But tonight, the city is alive, its heart beating in harmony with the river. And under the moonlight, the ancient city dreams. As night deepens, the Indus River glimmers like a ribbon of molten silver, flowing past the silent walls of Mohenjo Daro. It has seen countless dawns and dusks, carried both the joy of harvest and the sorrow of farewell. Somewhere in its depths, it holds the memories of this city, its voices, its footsteps, its heartbeat. The river will keep flowing long after the last stone has crumbled, carrying the breath of a civilization into the endless horizon. And thus, Mohenjo Daro rests not as a place lost, but as a story eternal, whispered by the water and remembered by time. In the stillness of the desert night, Mohenjo Daro lies beneath a blanket of sand and stars. Its streets are silent now, its wells dry, its markets long forgotten. Yet, in the heart of those who listen closely, the city still breathes. Every brick, every carving, every grain of sand holds the echo of life that once pulsed here. The laughter of children, the rhythm of the drums, the fragrance of fresh bread from the ovens, none of it is truly gone. For history does not end, it only changes its form. And Mohenjo Daro, the mound of the dead, will forever live as the mound of memories, a timeless whisper in the wind, a shadow in the moonlight, and a reminder that even the greatest civilizations are but chapters in the endless book of time. Thank you for walking with me through the ancient streets, hearing the festival drums, and feeling the breath of a civilization that has slept for thousands of years. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share so that these ancient memories may live on in every word we tell. See you again in our next journey through time.